What's up, everyone? It's 2 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, which means you're tuning into cannabis legalization news. I'm producer Lauren, and today we're going to be speaking with Kristin, Baldwin, and Caitlein Ryan from the Cannabis Alliance. But first, we do have to get into a little bit of cannabis legalization news. So, Miggy and Tom, how y'all doing?
Hey, Lauren, how are you?
Good. What's happening?
Did you know what the state of Illinois did yesterday?
What's that?
They actually updated the infuser application.
Oh my God.
So like they're accepting them. They've been accepting them for 2 weeks. And the most recent update to the infuser application was on March 2nd.
Did they change like wording like craft grow again or some bullshit?
No, I think the change was, and this is my fault. Oh, good. I'm on Do Not Disturb. I say I'm just kind of a little flustered because I've been running around literally all day. And then please do come out to the Hubbard Inn tonight in Chicago. That's right. Reporting from the Chicago office today. At Hubbard Inn in Chicago tonight at 7 is a panel discussion that I'll be on for the Green and Shy network event. So yeah, there's a pretty good panel that's together. Some people in real estate, mine's more like regulatory compliance aspects, and then so we'll be talking more cannabis live this evening.
So when they do an update like that, how do they blast it and alert everybody like, hey, check your applications?
Well, I guess I could easily share my screen on that. In an effort to save browser space, I'd like exited out of it. So let me just go back one and I can show you. Let me now share my screen here, and you'll see. And this is actually something that I had to stop doing because I would download, because this is the actual page itself. And so I, like a fool who thinks that I should keep my own records in case I don't have the internet. So I would go here and then I would download this as a PDF. Bad mistake, because then, as you can see, this was just updated. Well, not yesterday. I guess it's the 4th now, isn't it? So it was updated on Monday. And so I always just now when I have the clients, I'm like, don't, because like they updated it. And so we're building stuff for the application and it's wrong because the Illinois likes to challenge you. Oh, the other thing is I'm going to stop sharing my screen and remind everybody that you're going to want to stick around until the end, because that's when I'm going to tell you the big cannabis legalization news.
Right on.
I like how you say right on. That was that. I'll tell you who is got the contract to grade the cannabis dispensary applications in Illinois.
Right on. Hey, the reason why I asked you is because Michigan just put out some released some notes. They're actually slowly killing their medical program. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that you had shared something, and that sucks that they're slowly killing their medical program. But their medical program was substantially different than their current legalization rubric. So that may explain why they're thinking about gutting their medical. I mean, Michigan was like, it was illegal to sell, and so there was a lot of care providers, and those is that what they call them?
Yeah, I think that's any state. But
all right. Illinois had them, but you would just be a courier to go to the dispensary and pick up the medicine for the patient. In some states, they actually get to be the gardener, the cultivator,
Yeah, the caregiver, another person.
The caregiver, that's it. And so, right. And because they had that caregiver system, that might explain why they're really, really changing it to more of a controlled supply, where the supply is going to have to be tested, come through licensed facilities that's regulated a specific way, what's in it. Some of the growers that come out of Michigan, I mean, they're great growers. It's just that they were growing in a different type of market than an industrial type of factory cannabis market like you're seeing in the indoor grows in Illinois.
Yeah, I just think in Michigan, their culture's older and established.
Bash, John Sinclair. Yeah.
You're just about to boost the black market or the traditional market.
Legacy market.
There you go.
Yeah, legacy market. That's for everybody who's out there tuning up their master grower resumes. First off, you can email them at tom@collateralbase.com. I'll take a look at your grower resume. But then also, if you have legacy industry experience, that's how I define it. Not just like I was selling weed for cash, legacy industry experience. Yeah.
Well, you got to know what you're talking about too. I mean, the whole process of the plant, like a proper grow, right? You remember JJ was talking about how 75% of the consumers don't care if it's quality cannabis or not. They just want the bud.
Oh, that's that. JJ was saying it was 75% don't care about quality cannabis. That's terrible. I can't believe that cannabis is in such a terrible state of affairs in 2020, where it's never been so. It's so delicious when you get it done right.
Exactly, and it's medicinal. Like that's, even though it's a magic plant that covers a lot of different ailments.
You know what I thought was cool legalization news this week? You did it. You hacked that Google search engine algorithm, and Miggy made a video on the coronavirus and cannabis, and it's just been blazing the internet search because people are searching for cannabis, coronavirus, and then you get Miggy's little report that he did.
Well, here, let me go outside of Seattle and show you what's going on.
Oh, do you guys have oh, that's good. That's good. Is that a furry that's in the back of the zombies?
Yeah, well, it is Seattle. I'm just saying they legalized weed.
That's right.
Yeah, we got furries everywhere in the corner. We got
Bill
Murray. I think
is that a Bill Murray zombie?
I think so. But
well, that's what we hear, and I think our guests actually have some insight as to the spread of the coronavirus that we'll bring on later. Anyway, I just thought it was these weeks are now becoming blurs. And so this was like the first week or day that I've gone to Chicago and, do you want to see a dead plant?
What? No,
it's a Japanese peace lily. It's not a cannabis plant. Nobody should let those die unless they need to be harvested. But this is what happens when you go back downstate to the farm to work on cannabis applications for 2 weeks straight. There's some collateral damage.
That's a sad state of affairs, my friend.
Yeah, it is. But you know what I got before I left Peoria? So the plants would be okay there.
Well, it seems like a great amount of lag is what you got going on.
A great amount of lags.
Yeah, your audio is coming in great, but
well, I'm glad for the people listening at home. The audio is coming in well, but
that is
I'm hardwired into it. It's just that I have not been here for 2 weeks, so I bet Comcast just kind of dialed down my internet, and it's like, now it's using bandwidth. What's going on? Just shut it down.
Well, your tabs too now. Google Chrome's probably eating your shit up, but
that's not all I have open. And I was working, and if I wasn't doing this, I'd still be working. I'll just quit all of those and save that, and I'll try. Why don't you interview our guests, and I'll reboot?
All right.
I love it.
Hey, Lauren, let's bring on our guest from the Cannabis Alliance.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Hey, Kristin and Caitlein, what's going on?
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about the Cannabis Alliance?
Sure.
Go right ahead.
We'll give you our standard line, and then Caitlein will give you the inside scoop. Okay. We're the largest trade association in the state of Washington, and we represent the widest variety of licensees and ancillary businesses. So we have 250 members, and we're growing very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And you guys are strictly in Washington State?
Primarily, we do have a lot of partnerships throughout the country with other statewide trade organizations, as well as a couple of the national organizations.
And we do have members that are outside of the Washington State, but it's mostly Washington State just because of the way the industry is right now.
Well, yeah, you guys were around before when it was medical, right?
Yeah, actually the Alliance, it's called the Alliance because it was formed out of a couple of different groups coming together, the largest of which was the, what did CFC stand for? Cannabis. At any rate, it was a patient group that was the primary beginner of the Cannabis Alliance.
And that's a big focus of what you guys do too, right, for the patients?
Yeah, we're very much focused on patients and then also making the industry sustainable.
Yeah. So our mission statement is the Cannabis Alliance is dedicated to the advancement of a vital, sustainable, and ethical cannabis industry. And so we believe that includes ancillary businesses, licensees, and patients.
Right. Yeah. And then Kristin, you're the president, right?
No, Caitlin's the president. I'm the executive director. Yes.
Yes. We're each other's bosses.
Well, the reason why I thought Caitlein was because I was trying to do some research on both of you guys before we met, and then I see Caitlein does a lot of the LCB meetings, which is the governing body here. Like you sign in whether it's pro or not, or I think it's your signature or your name on there.
Kristin usually does a lot of those LCB meetings. And,
right on.
I pop in when I'm required or when I'm interested, but Kristin's the official LCB plan.
Yes.
and then as president, because your background is you're a political consultant, right?
Yes. Yeah. So my background is actually education, and that's where some of that political consulting comes in. Worked a lot on curriculum development and statewide standards. My doctorate's in arts education and qualitative research, and kind of moved through that. And then I had 4 children, which made it hard to continue being a teacher, and came over to my other love, which is cannabis and politics.
Right on. Then and for you, I gotta work you guys' names out here. Gotta give me Tom, you look a lot better now.
Well, let's just wait until I actually try using the platform. I'm sure it'll screw up really, really quickly. So then, why couldn't you be a teacher anymore after you had 4 kids?
I would have to have paid to go to work.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I tell you, that's terrible.
As an educator, to pay for childcare with that many young children.
No,
it does that. Life happens, right?
Life happens, yeah.
That's expensive, and 4 kids. That's 4 mouths to feed, 4 sets of things to pick up. Cool.
I braved the crowds at Costco just for our weekly family trip to Costco.
I miss Costco trips. My kids are older now, but when they're little, man, Costco is your go-to for everything.
Yeah,
So what's Cannabis Alliance working on now for Washingtonian law?
Well, our session's starting to wind down right now.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. It was a bit of a hairy ride this year.
Yeah.
So
what was on the agenda in Washington State?
Oh, we had all sorts of things on the agenda for Washington State because it's a short session. So it started at the beginning of January and it ends in the middle of March. So legislators were just basically throwing bills into the whole mix. And we were looking at unionizing the entire industry, requiring people to have
forced unionization.
Forced unionization
in cannabis.
Yes, they were going to be required to have a labor peace agreement and collective bargaining agreement. It was a point system, and those 2 had the most points in order to renew your license.
Ours have very little points, but they ask about them in the application. So like we have a labor peace agreement that we will consider because like these are startups. So like the employees hadn't even had a say. There are no employees.
I thought it had to be a state thing though, like a right to work state. Like Tucson, when I used to live in Arizona, the Machinists Union was really trying to get us involved, and but they're not the greatest union out there. How's that work in Washington though? How can you enforce a whole industry to be unionized?
Well, you created so that they had a lot of points. It was basically you had to reach like 200 points, and I think 60 and 70 of those points were collective bargaining and labor peace. So the other pieces were they had to be a living wage, which was about 150% of minimum wage. You had to have a child care reimbursement, but you can't be near a child care, so that's kind of a problem. They had
so like you couldn't have your own as an employee benefit. You couldn't say like, here's the child care room. So like you could have like in-house child care. Yeah, you
can't look near child care. So and they also wanted employee profit sharing, but again, that is also illegal under the LCB rules. And
now we're building that into our applications here in Illinois. Like, I'm building. I'm like, all right, and give some to the employees. We're trying to check these boxes.
Yeah. And I can see that would be a great one to have, but this is the first year our businesses have actually shown a profit. So, but if you do profit sharing, then you have to disclose them as a true party of interest. And if they're a true party of interest, then they have to have a background check. So it's just this never ending, and this is all to get your license renewed. And and it was a little bit nutty. So that came up this year.
And legislators, all you had to say to them was, just take cannabis out of this legislation, and how would you feel about it? And that took a lot of their breath away. They all kind of went, oh, yeah.
It's just crazy how Washington governs this whole industry between the LCB and our politicians who have no fucking idea what the plant is.
But they make the rules.
Yeah.
They make the rules.
Yeah. You're right. But there's all this sort of backpedaling that keeps happening. Like a decision's made, and then there's a coming back that changes the landscape entirely. And had we talked about things like labor peace agreements and things like this at the outset,
Yeah.
it would be one thing, and we could have had a really meaningful conversation. We're committed to labor and making sure that our employees are well taken care of. We'll talk probably a little bit more about how we truly believe that this is an opportunity to set up an industry that looks different, that's more ethical, but to then suddenly sidle, like you said, there are no employees. Most of my colleagues have paid themselves for the very first time this year.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, it's Washington State.
So whose idea was it to do?
Oh, Tom's on the lag again. Back in time.
I would like to thank the great city of Chicago for just having truly terrible internet.
Well, I think it was a bit of a marriage between union and another association, and the other association wants out-of-state funding, and so they made a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
And this deal with the devil is you support our out-of-state funding, and we'll support your labor peace agreement renewal process. Well, the out-of-state funding was predominantly trounced right away out of the gate because it wasn't really well thought out, and the labor peace agreement kept going. And unfortunately, because of the way the Democrats lean both labor and they're very supportive of cannabis, it was the two liberal leaning industry groups kind of battling it out and making it awkward with the legislators who really do rely on both groups.
Where does the Cannabis Alliance stand on home grows?
Full support.
Very
I testified in support, right? With all the people that have been working on it for years and years. It's extraordinary that, because Illinois is the only other state that doesn't allow home grow with adult use, I believe.
That's right. We only have.
Medical.
It's interesting though. Like I've heard that it's almost a de minimis penalty if you're growing the same thing that you can grow if you are a medical patient. 5 plants. I have one. It's an autoflower on a timer in my house. It's got months to go, but I can only do that because I'm a medical patient. If I was just Joe Blow in Illinois over 21, I couldn't grow.
And that's the same here in Washington. You can get you can grow if you are a medical patient.
Right.
Yeah, but then the registry.
We'll join we'll join your guys' fight for home grow Illinois. We need it.
Right.
Yeah, we do. It's only fair. People are allowed to grow tomatoes. They should be allowed to grow.
What's the penalty though? What's the penalty? Because I think in Illinois, no home grow, the penalty is de minimis. So if you're doing the same thing that I'm going to be doing as a medical patient, I think it's only $200. But I should review that. I'm not a criminal lawyer. I'm a business
I don't
lawyer.
think there's a fine. Is there a set,
I don't
violation?
think there's a response. And it can go all the way up to the maximums available.
It depends on jurisdiction, I think.
Yeah, and I know somebody's been rated a medical patient. Him and his wife were rated up north, and they were under the amount limits. So again, it's at the discretion of also the authority in that area.
Well, and right now we actually had a bill that we had hoped would go and didn't, because right now even medical patients aren't allowed affirmative defense, so they're essentially assumed guilty until you prove that they're not. And so we were trying to at least get it shifted over to affirmative defense so that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Well, it would also help the consumer.
Thought that's how that just all. I thought the whole innocent of proven guilty thing was just that's everywhere. I didn't know that in Washington State it's the opposite. That sounds like the civil law of Europe.
I told you we're weird, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, but a home grow will help the consumer as far as, because I saw one of you guys' videos on YouTube where you guys talk about if the consumer always buys the highest THC at the lowest price, you're going to set the market for that expectation. Whereas, if you're intimate with the plant, you get to know things like terpenes, and you got to flush it and you got to cure it. And, there's a whole process that you could fuck up along the way.
Well, and we've said that a lot to legislators, is even if every single person wanted to try and grow at home, the likelihood of folks being successful at getting an outcome that resembles what they can find at a store is pretty low. Unless they already know what they're doing, which
that's the demonstration that they don't know what they're doing, because it's kind of like the homebrew of beer. This grow we talk about all the time. It's work. You have to tend to those plants. You have to care for them. You just can't leave Those plants need daily attention. And so like the home brewer beer isn't going to put Budweiser out of business. It's not even going to put like the brew pub down the street out of business. There's overhead in this industry. And then they think in their heads, because they don't have any experience. So they have an oversimplification. It's like, you mean like you just water it and it's a plant? No.
You call it a weed.
And in addition to that, what we know from craft brewing and home brewing is that it actually makes people buy more higher price point products. So
that's right. It creates the connoisseur out there. So like the beer stuff.
Totally stealing that one. Connoisseur. I like it.
Yeah. Well, and then all the ancillary that goes into it too, like, grow lights, home grow setups. There's so many ways that home grow helps the industry. And
and then the seeds and the clones that gotta come from somewhere.
The genetics and the flavor. And then I think that's where it's going to get to in another 5-10 years after they've kind of gotten over the whole THC thing. Then it might really be brands that have feelings, flavors, tastes, all those types of stuff, because they take all the terpenes and the other flavonoids that are in the plant and they create experiences from that. I mean, it's going to be cool.
Yeah, my big thing right now is introducing folks to the entourage. Know your entourage, and that will help you make sure that you're picking out weed that you like.
Yes.
Yeah.
What else is the Alliance working on for Washington? I mean, so I know you guys also doing packaging, right? Like you guys reduced the film thickness recently?
We went from 4 to 2 millimeters. Boy, clearly it's been a while since I've had to work in decimal.
Yeah, that's an initiative that we've taken on because a lot of the environmental concerns are more regulatory, so LCD and not so much legislative. So that's a good interim project that we're working on. So with LCB, we reduced the thickness of the bags, which represents tens of thousands of waste tonnage per year.
What bags did you reduce the thickness of?
The Mylar bags that that folks are required to use.
How is Washington State handling the cannabis waste issue? We have those things here in Illinois, and I've just been throwing them in my recycling. I'm not sure if they're getting through.
Which things? I didn't see what you.
This is an eighth, and so this was an eighth. Oh. It's now a 0. But then,
container.
You can recycle the jars. You cannot recycle tubes because they're too small, so they don't go through the recycle sorter.
So we can do jars.
What's that?
So we can do jars. I was told in the beginning when this process all happened, when 502 happened, don't throw away your containers because of touch weed, they can't wash it properly or it was the dumbest excuse for why you couldn't recycle plastic.
Well, it's more about the size. You just need to make sure it's not too small for the sorter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, if you're following all the regular recycling rules.
Well, we will give a plug for our summit because we have a summit coming up, a big think tank summit on September 25th, where one of the panels is to talk about the actual plant waste. What do we do with the plant waste itself? And how do we recycle that, whether it's into paper or it's compost or what do we, how can we, or whether or not it's not, we can create secondary products with that.
Because right now, so bio waste is one of our big focuses for this upcoming year because it's kind of low hanging fruit. It's an easy one to fix. And right now in Washington State, you have to neutralize your plant waste, which a lot of people use like kitty litter in order to do. So they mix it with a ton of kitty litter and then it all goes right into a landfill, which is
again, it's the regulation. It's the regulators showing that they just are clueless about this plant. And it's the same thing in Illinois. You have to take this plant waste and then render it unusable, like mix it with other trash or something. And then you have to throw it away and make sure like, oh gosh, it's Hitler's ghost or something, just get it away from here, as opposed to, well, let's look at this from a biological level. It's these chemicals. How can we treat this to make it into paper or to really be a resource neutral to the fullest extent that you can cannabis provider? That's fascinating stuff.
It just
meanwhile, we've got composting partners who are chomping at the bit to be able to take that plant waste in.
Right.
We've just got to get the regulators
to buy off on it.
Yeah.
How much weight, and this is something I'll find out as the industry really moves into Illinois next year, and I'm advising them. How much weight are we talking about in like an indoor grow, how much plant waste does that put out?
I mean, I can only go off of, what an indoor grow would produce in flower. I mean, that's just in flower alone.
I mean, think of the canopy sizes.
We're doing a couple tons a year, and that's just flower.
That's just flowers. So I mean, it's the stems and everything are pretty heavy.
Root balls, and I mean, there's all this doing with the entire plant where we're not able to tap into this. And frankly, our cannabis businesses should be able to make additional money off of this.
Yeah.
That's what they would refer to as waste, but really it's not waste. It's just
that's one of you're absolutely right. And this is one of the interesting hiccups though in the hemp industry right now, is that there's no money going into these types of facilities to treat anything that's not related to the flower. Like, so you'd have to grow the CBD hemp. So if we allowed our licensed cannabis cultivators to be able to do that research into the product that you're throwing away, I'm not saying that it's going to be exactly like industrial hemp that you're growing for fiber, but it's the same plant. You'd be able to do some research on it and turn it into a higher value product so that you could then help that hemp industry grow and create the industrial applications that, I mean, like, who's going to invest $50 million in a plant to create industrial applications for hemp?
Yeah.
So I actually know who. One of our big initiatives that we've been working on for a few years, and we have another year to go, but establishing the first cannabis commission in the United States here in Washington State.
That's right.
We're well known for our agriculture here, and there's no reason why we wouldn't put the same support behind our cannabis industry as we would all of our other agriculture, like apples.
Sure.
Research like that is exactly what the commission would be doing.
Well, do that. That'd be awesome. And then and then we'll go out, we'll do some shows from there. And then I'll tell Illinois that we need to amend this law, because that's the beauty part of this cannabis stuff. Because you guys are you're the oldest, you're the most experienced state in cannabis legalization at the adult use level. And you still are seeing a constant evolution of your laws. So might as well start pushing them the ways we want them to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're hoping for. Some people get a little confused because commissions a lot of times do out of state advertising, and it's set up to be able to do that once we're federal. But until then, we really want to be a leader and an example for other states of, we're tired of being what not to do. We would like to move into the space of what to do instead.
Yeah, totally. Well, it just seems like too, like policies are written by the stereotype that we're supposed to be. All right, here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. I mean, that makes no sense. Like, where do you think this stoner stereotype comes from, and why is it so pervasive?
Yeah, it just seems like we're being funneled by the powers that be who think like that. It's just,
It takes education. It's going to take some time. It takes some education, and I think this year we got farther in the legislature to create this commission than we've ever before, and it was an education to both the legislators and ourselves. And it just took some time. It took the Department of Agriculture to kind of push it, because they also said, hey, we don't have any research on pesticides. It took some partners in the hemp world to kind of say, whatever we learn in cannabis, we can apply to hemp, because often hemp doesn't want to be associated with cannabis, but they're starting to see, for example, we're good partners. And so if we put up a commission like this, they benefit. And they see it as a benefit as well. But they got to be quiet about it, because they don't want
to get kicked out of their bank.
Don't I look like a stoner? Doesn't Caitlein look like a stoner? We're really proud of ourselves.
The only one here that looks like a stoner is Miggy, and that's only because he's standing in front of a field of cannabis.
I thought you were going to say because I was brown, but that's all right.
Oh, no. It's because you're reporting from weed. That's what it is.
Out from the weeds.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I go outside, it's a zombie apocalypse.
That's true.
Man. That's scary. I mean, like, I went to Chicago, and there's people here. I'm like, they could be carrying the disease.
Yeah.
Every time you hear a cough, is everybody turn?
I know.
No. It is weird. I'm used to being rural.
Yeah, here in Seattle, I just really don't notice a difference. I mean, everybody wears a mask anyways.
That's true. That's true. In certain communities, they're masked anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But
But what I have noticed, like in this whole building that I work in, because usually they provide hand sanitizer wipes for you guys, for us, just surfaces, whatever. Nerds don't like to get sick in allergy season. A whole building is dry of white. I'm like, how the fuck does this even happen? Like, I'm gonna take these home.
Yeah, I know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Probably.
Sorry, it's not a Fred Meyer. I'm leaving with these.
Yeah.
Oh shit. So what do you guys for the Alliance, what do you guys consider the difference between an advocate and an activist?
We were debating this earlier this morning, and I don't know, you had kind of a more cogent.
Well, an activist, we were talking about, an activist is actually out there pushing the envelope, and an advocate is behind the activist, actually kind of smoothing things over. And I think now that Caitlein and I have talked, she was like, we always need the activists. And I was like, I think, I'm from a more moderate viewpoint, and I'm like, I'd like to be the advocate. I want to come behind and just say to the legislators, it's okay. It's okay. It's not that bad. We're not going to, but it's interesting to watch the activists out there yelling and screaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then to come behind and be the voice of reason and the kind of the voice of calm and saying, your grandma uses weed.
It's like the difference between Bernie and Biden. So the Bernie is the activist and Biden is the advocate. It's a little bit more.
Yeah, I would actually say between Bernie and Elizabeth more, because I feel like the advocate and the activist primarily still want the same thing.
They do.
It's a much closer similarity. Just, one's out there shouting.
Mm-hmm. And the other one, I think Elizabeth Warren is more the advocate. She's out there kind of smoothing things behind, and she has the same policies as Bernie.
Mm-hmm.
She just has a plan behind them.
Yeah,
and I think
an
advocate and they need both. Now that we've talked, you do need both. You need the person out there in front, and they're the ones that need to be wearing the weed T-shirts, and they're the ones that need to have the long hair, and they're the ones that And we see the advocates and the activists in a lot of the legislative hearings, and in a little sense, you're like, oh boy, here you are. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, when you come in as the voice of reason behind them, the legislators are like, oh, good, you're not going to yell at me. I think the same thing as the activist.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it in a little quieter voice.
Yeah.
To remind them, your grandma smokes weed.
No, I used to hate the term activist myself just because I thought all activists were poor.
And you're probably right.
Like, I like money and showers. Fuck you.
Yeah, but some activists, sometimes they lose the forest for the trees. I think that's one of the problems when they go into those extremes. They lose a lot of the people, because most people, they just want to be normal, have a good life, have a regular, have fun, a little bit of money, and go home and see their kids. Right. Some people are like, no, we have to do this or otherwise everything's crap. Those ones are just a little too extreme sometimes, and I think they can turn people off by that.
They are, but on the other hand, they bring out some ideas, and you're like, I never really thought of that. Okay, let's see how we can make this work. So they can yell and scream, and then if you listen to them, you're like, wait a minute, there's a kernel of truth here that I can make this particular kernel of truth work. I'm not going to listen to the rest of you yelling, but this little particular truth work. And I've talked to some of those activists that go into some of the regulatory meetings and they yell, and I say to them, you know what, as soon as you yell, people stop listening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say what you want to say, I learned that when I have 3 kids of my own, they're all grown, but I learned if I yelled, my kids stopped listening, but if I got really quiet, they listened very carefully, because it meant mom was pissed. And so I've learned if I'm really, really angry, my voice gets really, really quiet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they used to play my voicemails to their friends when they were teenagers.
When you were just like whispering to them, you're like, my mom's pissed. Hey,
my mom hear this. Yeah. I gotta go.
Yeah. That activist stuff can be kind of frustrating to do the cleanup of afterwards. And I think we have fought very hard to put a more professional face on this industry as a whole. And I think that we're really succeeding in that in general. Yeah. And so the activist is nice in that for those of us that are doing this daily work all the time, sometimes you can forget that spark and be more amenable to some compromise perhaps in the process. That sometimes the activist is nice to give that little cattle prod of, there's a vision here that's worth fighting for.
No.
Well, speaking of that, and I was going to get into the social equity question then, because we're going to talk about vision. How are you guys because I know how they're approaching social equity well in Illinois, but how are they doing it in Washington?
Terribly.
They're not doing it well. They're kind of trying to do it backwards.
What does that mean? So like they're making more white people get in, like white men. We need more white men in this industry. Yeah.
No, so unlike Illinois, it was not addressed at the outset.
Right.
So now we've had, just about 5 years of no attention being given to it at all whatsoever. And then so in trying to attend to it retroactively, it's a lot of fluff that doesn't get at the substance of the problem. And it's done in a vacuum of consultation with the folks that it would affect most. So it's a bunch of white legislators or other groups kind of coming up with solutions that really don't have much of an impact on them to begin with.
Yeah, because you guys have quite a disparity between wealth and normal people in your state.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
The Alliance is working on the social equity part.
That's good.
Yeah, on the social equity part, and it's a continuous. It's all put into the fabric of the association. And so everything we take on, we look at it through the lens of social equity, and then we run it by our partners who are out there on the front lines and the two minority groups that are really active. We look at it in their lens, and we ask for their input. And then when they have particular pieces of legislation they want to run, we weigh in and make sure that we have their support. But it's all done very transparently. And there's a current social equity bill right now that none of the groups like.
Yeah.
So I think
why is that? What does it do?
Frankenstein's that was just ill-conceived to begin with, and then as it's moved through the stages, it's been reshaped. And so social equity in title, but in the actual implementation of it will be.
It's mostly
yeah, it's all bureaucratic.
Weren't they going to add licenses and then say, okay?
It was to add licenses. It was actually to go out and give out licenses to those impacted by the war on drugs, but there was no certification attached to it. So I jokingly say I'm going to go in and say I'm Thai, and they're going to give me a license, and I'm going to turn around and sell it right away because there's no certification. There's no way to go back and check in a year to see if it's actually still impacting those communities. There's no funding attached to it. It creates a task force around social equity, and it creates an ombudsman to help those various, I think there's 13 retail licenses that are going to be released, but it doesn't address producer processors. It doesn't address any of the funding that people are going to need. It doesn't address allowing more licenses for social equity to farm. It's just 13 retail licenses in cities that frankly have put a moratorium on cannabis businesses. So I'm not quite sure, unless you want to open a store on Lopez Island.
Okay.
Not a bad place, but then you'd be the token person of color on Lopez. And doesn't really address what we're talking about. Not really.
It's kind of a shitty way to go about it.
Now, does your guys' data kind of look like the rest of the data as a whole in the country, where the people that are arrested for cannabis use typically are not white?
Right.
Yeah. I was at a conference.
Is that an aspect of your social equity, though? Because they kind of built that in. Like, if you are arrested, you're going to get these points. And then that's fairly easy to prove. You have an arrest record. So, like, it really means you were impacted by the war on drugs. And then they just, it's limited. So, like, they didn't want to reward large marijuana traffickers for it. So, if you were busted for, like, up to a pound of possession, or if you were busted with an ounce of intent to distribute, that qualified you to get all these points in the Illinois the Illinois rubric. So like when they have the scoring system for these social equities, they'd be competitive. So there'd be points, and you have to get over the line of the points. 20% of the points would come from that arrest. And it really puts them way out the gate, because otherwise you pretty much need to have a perfect application if you don't have that social equity talent in Illinois.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
That would be really useful. This current bill doesn't address that. You have to come up with your own social equity plan, and then it goes by a certain committee.
And here in Washington, our licensing regulations in terms of criminal record aren't that specific. So it's simply just misdemeanor or felony. It doesn't break it down any further than that.
But I thought you couldn't be an owner if you have a felony, a cannabis felony in Washington State.
Correct.
That's just, see, our social equity rocks.
If you've had any felony for drugs, for any kind of drugs. So, exactly. So a ton of people who, I like how you said traditional market, who are in the traditional market.
Yep.
Just
legacy market.
Legacy market.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. That was also the connoisseur guy, the Boveda. No, Boveda. That was Lance, right?
Yeah, well, he accepted both ways to say it either.
Yeah, Boveda, but yeah, that was great. He had the connoisseur and also the legacy market. But then he's in Southern California. Those guys have had legal weed since.
Yeah, they have very nice business cards too. I appreciate them.
But Illinois' social equity, they're also, you guys, it's a loan, right, that they offer the candidates?
They can. That's one of the applications that'll probably help some people on in May after I relax a bit. But they have a loan fund, about $30 million, open to social equity applicants, at least on the dispensing side. They don't have it on the craft grow side. Then you still need to have adequate capitalization, but it's just a little bit easier to access financing when you're building a cultivation facility as opposed to a retail facility. So hopefully, that should be good. So you have to win your license. You have to be a social equity winner, and then you can ask for one of these loans, these low interest loans from the state of Illinois, and they have like $30 million set away for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's nicely.
And that's where ours falls down the most, is just no financial support.
Well, you see, that's why you make it something to hype, and then I think actually for the 30 million, they actually.
Man down.
Whenever you try to talk about the man, and the man's like, "Oh crap, he's going to tell him how to screw us over." Cut his feed. So they required the current producers to chip in that. So you just shake down the current license holders, or you'll revoke their licenses.
Huh. Although we have
they won't like that.
around some micro lending and within the industry, and I think enough people are pretty much interested in social equity that we might get. I don't think we'll get 30 million.
No,
but we might have something as long as we had some seed funding. But frankly, I think the state should cough up some money as well. I mean, they make enough money off of us.
Do you know how many total producers and processors and everybody all together is in Washington State's industry?
1,700?
Well, I think that's the latest. Yeah,
like 1,700.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
1,700. That's a combination of stores and grows, though, right?
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, like how big's your average grow in Washington?
Okay, that's the number of licenses. Right. Not all of them are in action right now. So it's about 300, I think, of that.
Yeah.
But during the medical days, we had over 1,000 dispensaries throughout the state. And so that was also vertical. A lot of times it was a grower who had a storefront, and then plus their buddies' other stuff. But, 1,000 dispensaries, what we have now is still not meeting the needs of, because patients are high use.
And certainly not patient needs in terms of quality tested products. So pesticide, heavy metal free, and then potency of product is also something that folks are having a hard time getting their hands on. And then volume.
Simple volume.
And consistency.
What are you guys shooting for testing for Washington State? Because I think we're still at the point where it's a line between recreational and medical, right?
A line for testing?
Yeah, there was the requirement where.
We're the LCB's released the new rules. They're in rulemaking for quality assurance testing, and their deadline for comments is March 18th. So we're putting together the Cannabis Alliance's statement on that. But there is some wide-ranging thoughts around quality assurance. I mean, everybody wants it to be tested. It's just cost prohibitive. I mean,
but the size of the lot testing is what a lot of folks are debating about, and and then where within the, those kinds of logistics. But we are, as an industry on a whole, everybody's for full spectrum pesticide and heavy metal testing.
Yeah.
And along with that is getting the DOH list and the LCB list of pesticides more simpatico with one another, so that we were looking at the exact same things. And
totally.
All those kinds of
things. I never understood why we had that line for something that's human consumption. This is the good weed, this is the bad weed. If we just tested them all the same and gave the consumer a chance to say, here's your shitty weed with shitty pesticides, thank you, here's your $10 for an eighth or whatever, people will buy it.
Yeah. You guys don't have a list of like prohibited pesticides or prohibited things that you're not allowed to put on the plants?
We already do.
We do.
From the Department of Health.
Right.
And then LCB also has a list.
But they're not the same list.
But they have items on them. Yeah.
They'll be allowed Eagle Max at one time.
Yeah. And the problem is that often these, we're noticing this between the LCB, the Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, and the Department of Ecology, is they're not all talking to each other. And of course there's a little bit of battle over turf, but it's also, they're so massive and no one requires them to talk to each other. No one says, okay, here is there's no overarching, again, that's where a commission would come in. There's no overarching entity that says, okay, we're covering cannabis and you guys all need to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the LCB likes to nickel and dime everybody, growers, stores. I don't know if you guys remember Dank's Emporium down in Olympia.
Yeah.
They had a podcast that was behind their shop, a door that was divided to a separate room. And they even got it confirmed through LCB inspectors that, hey, as long as you don't have access from the main pot shop, it's considered a different building. But eventually they were raided because they were doing dabs on the show. And that's why I don't get how the LCB gets the authority to crack down on a podcast. Like they actually raided the podcast, took their equipment, and they just overextend themselves. Another incident is a friend of mine, Levi Lyon, who does the Pride bus, the Levi, the dab bus, and he has a private party. That's Washington State's workaround, right? We're all friends, and so I'm gonna give you something and we're gonna hang out. But they took his bus.
Yeah.
Like,
what?
Fuck?
Yeah.
Dude, I tell stories about that bus.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's raising money to try and get his bus back because he's really kind of, it's really hurting his business.
No, that was
That is business. Yeah. But he's still doing the music stuff, but it's not in Washington State. Unfortunately, it's really dampened his own.
Well, and to answer your question, LCB's been given that enforcement capability. And as we know, anybody in that enforcement role will at some point push it beyond what their scope of enforcement is. And unless somebody is there to rein them back in, they will continue to do it. And there is very little oversight of LCB other than themselves. And pushing back.
Fear with recreational, because a long time ago I wrote an article kind of preempting, like when it was medical. I don't know if you guys remember, it was the Wild West. Tom's mind's blown whenever I talk about the markets and doing on-site consumption and walking away with cheap quality cannabis. But once 502 happened, now you had the state police now under the arm of the governing body, which there was no governing body when it's medical, which kind of what hurt us. But yeah, to give state troopers and local authorities the right to take a bus or podcast equipment, fucking insane. Way to go, Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. I tell stories about that bus when I'm in Illinois. I remember it like it was yesterday, even though it was like 9-10 months ago. But anyway, one thing, it's Women's History Month here, and us at CLN are highlighting women leaders in cannabis. So what advice do you have for women? Oh, it says female identifying folk who are interested in transitioning to cannabis industry, but don't know where to start.
Volunteer at your local association. I think that's really kind of huge. If you have a trade association, get out there and start volunteering. I have to say the nice thing about this industry is it's really women friendly. For the most part. I've come from several other industries where it's a real struggle for women to be heard. I think women have a place. I think women are a strong voice in this industry, and we need to hear from you, and we need you to be active in your local trade associations.
Now, that's not to say we don't have our own issues with misogyny in our industry, obviously, but from a business perspective, it's the only time that I've enjoyed being in rooms that are truly mixed gender, and that's gender across the spectrum. It's a pretty welcoming group of folks, and the first time as a woman, I don't feel like I'm constantly having to prove myself as an effective leader, and in the same way that I have had to in other industries. So come on in, start showing up to events, get involved, start calling your legislator, just that way. And I think that you'll find a really easy time finding a mentor and somebody to put their arm around you and show you the ropes and start introducing you around.
Yeah.
I have to add too that the Alliance has some amazing women on the top part. Besides you two, I know AC Braddock and Danielle from Trailblazing. Just a bunch of badasses, period.
Nice.
Yeah, we got some pretty awesome women.
Well, it's fantastic. Hopefully you guys are off to a good 2020 and you don't all die of the coronavirus,
You almost lost me.
I know. It was really close. Really, really close there.
Hey, Tom, what's the secret you had to tell?
Oh, right. Yes. Thank you for sticking around to the end. Then I have to tell you why we're here. And the thing that I was going to share with everybody is who won the scoring of the actual application for the dispensaries. And so Illinois has done this bid here, and it says bid open date of March 9th, 2020, available date of 2024. But then lower on, it says, notice a contract pursuant to the CRTA, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act form, KPMG LLP, blind application grading. And I'm not sure if this is, hopefully that'll open somewhere. No, it still hasn't. That still is a dead link right there, unfortunately. But it looks like KPMG is going to be doing the scoring of how many applications did we have? We had 4,000 applications, approximately 800 teams. And so there's going to be a quantity of one, and then it's legal consulting. Here it is. So quantity of one, you review these 800 groups of apps, $2,500 an app for $2 million. Wow. And then after that, you get down to the human review. There you go, for the implementation of. So like after it gets more difficult and you're like, all right, well, let's figure out who all the tiebreakers are and stuff like that. Then that's an extra $500,000 contract for $200 an hour and 2,500 hours of work. So that's who's going to be grading this. KPMG also graded Florida's applications, which of course ended in a lot of litigation, and litigation's going on in Missouri right now as well, another competitive state. So in a few months, there'll be some litigation in Illinois.
Yay. More work for lawyers. That's awesome.
For him, at least.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's just so much regulation in this industry. It just goes to show that they don't know what they're regulating. Otherwise, there would be way more regulations in a different industry, because they'd be like, oh, it's that? Well, make sure you pay your taxes. Okay.
Yeah, pay your taxes and don't serve to minors. Very simple.
Yeah, very simple. Yeah.
Kristin, Caitlein, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
This was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Where can we go to follow and support the Cannabis Alliance?
You would visit, our website is thecannabisalliance.us.
You can also find us on all the social medias.
Yeah, we're all there.
Sweet. We'll make sure to do that. Thanks so much for tuning in for another episode of Cannabis Legalization News. And make sure you like and subscribe to keep up with all cannabis legalization news. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Peace. Cha-ching.
Oh.